Welcome to the Clear the Shelf podcast with Chris and Chris, the show that meets at the intersection of education and entertainment to discuss online arbitrage, retail arbitrage, wholesale, and all facets of selling on Amazon. We'll bring you news, tactics, strategies, insights, stories, and interviews to help you grow your Amazon business. And now, here are your hosts, Chris Grant and Chris Rasick. What's up, Amazon sellers, and welcome back to the Clear the Shelf podcast with myself and my Eulatricus co-host, Chris Rasick. Today, we're going to be discussing how to prepare for and implement a year-end review, or what I like to call a post-mortem on your Amazon business. Now, that's not saying your business is dead. It just means that the year of 2024 is now behind us, and it's time to do a little bit of an autopsy. It can be helpful to do this annual review to see what worked, see what failed, and kind of help point the ship in the right direction as we go into the next year. But before we get started, you guys know the drill. We spend minutes getting ready for each and every one of these episodes. So if you get some value from this show, do us a solid, pound the like button, hit subscribe, drop a comment. The best way for us to be able to grow this podcast is by getting you to interact with the show and letting us know you want to see more content like this. You keep up your end of the bargain. We'll keep showing up and bringing you some education mixed with just a little bit of entertainment and probably some sarcasm. All right, let's dive in. So, Chris, let's talk about, before we even get started, why this annual review or post-mortem is important. And we probably should put this right at the top. I mean, the top thing is you kind of need to know your financial landscape. I think that it's almost a trope, but people will talk about, oh, well, we'll see how many people are around after taxes when they realize, they didn't make any money the last year. And while it's something that a lot of sellers say, maybe tongue in cheek or kind of their way to give price tankers the middle finger. It's true. There are going to be a lot of sellers who have not necessarily kept the cleanest books, or, they're just turning money over as quickly as they can. And they don't know where the money is going or not going. And if they don't get a handle on that, you let that go for too long and you're going to be up a creek. I've seen it happen a couple of times. You've got $50,000 American Express bills and you don't have the cash to pay them, and you're really screwed.
Yeah, the phrase "know your numbers," that's no stranger to the show, and that's essentially at the root of this entire episode. Because you're right, it's definitely dangerous to not realize that you're losing money. And we've talked about how in this business, when you're not, if you have a day job, and you can kind of romanticize about being an entrepreneur and owning your own business. But there's definitely a reality check once you get started, because you are every role in the business if you're a solopreneur. So it's easy, things can slip through the cracks, or you certainly get blind spots because you can only pay attention to so many different things, which is why today's topic, it may sound granular, it's certainly not sexy, but it's necessary, because you need to be able to measure everything and automate, even if this comes down to taking stuff off your plate, but you have to shine a light on it and figure everything out. You have to, we've talked about the Pareto principle, also known as the 80-20 rule. It's absolutely amazing how many different facets that rule fits with. And that's essentially, in a nutshell, that's the rule that 20% of what you're doing is going to generate 80% of the positive results. So something like this, doing a post-mortem, analyzing everything, will help you figure out what that 20% is. Because if you can find out and narrow down and really put your finger on what the 20% is that's driving 80% of your success or your growth or whatever it is you're analyzing, you can do more of it. And that's essentially, it's going to get your store where you want it to be. So, yeah, it's important to, you need to identify it. And this isn't just a negative, you're not just sitting analyzing, the stupid things that you did over the year, or the things that you let go that you wish you had paid more attention to. You're identifying what worked as well as what didn't work. And be honest with yourself. This isn't for anyone else. There's no reason to sugarcoat or candy coat it. Just be honest. If it worked, mark it down, put it in the pro column. And if it didn't work, don't be afraid to call yourself out. It doesn't mean you're necessarily a bad business person. There are a lot of moving parts, and you have to be honest with yourself about what you do well and what you don't do well, because that's how you're ultimately going to improve.
Mm-hmm. You make a really strong point here. The fact that, one, this isn't going to get graded by anybody. You don't have to share it with your favorite guru or anything like that. You don't have to post it to social media where you may be ridiculed or something. And so honesty is key. But you said, having to mark something down in the loss column, it doesn't mean you're a bad business owner. Everyone makes mistakes, honestly. Even the most successful people in the world, they're really just coming up with stuff on the fly and seeing if it works. I mean, love him or hate him, if we go look at the richest guy in the world right now, Elon Musk, you know, he goes by this first principle of trying to remove everything you possibly can, and to the point where you break it and then you have to add something back in. And that's like one of the principles of Tesla, SpaceX, etc. I mean, heck, they take things out of rockets until they explode, and then they're like, oh, maybe we should have left that heat shield where it belonged. Let's go ahead and put that back in. And so you should expect to have to do not the similar, this isn't rocket surgery, but you should have to expect to do these kind of things in an Amazon business. But the whole point of doing this post-mortem is really just to help you plan for the upcoming year. Because if you can see what things you tripped over in the past year, and you can try to avoid those in the future, because you will see the same things over and over and over again. It's funny to me, having been doing this for over 10 years. You kind of see these cycles in categories, you see these cycles in products, and then you see the same product that you've sold for 6, 7, 8 years, maybe not consistently, but once a year, it's always profitable, or 3 times a year, it's always profitable. So you're going to see things over and over again, and you can jump over the hurdles a little bit easier, but then double down on that 20%. We're probably going to end up hitting on the Pareto principle a couple of times. And if you aren't familiar with the 80-20 rule or the Pareto principle, you absolutely have to learn it. It is fascinating, because it's not just 80-20, but then there is the 80% of the 20%, or the 80-20 of the 80-20. I think it's 96-4 or something like that. And I mean, you can get really granular with it. So I figured one of the best things we could do is help you with some business analysis prompts, some questions you can ask yourself, and you can take what works for you, and you can leave what doesn't work. This isn't something you have to go through every single one of these. Just pick and choose what works and what doesn't. But the first one we came up with was, what were the top 3 wins of the past year? Okay. I like it's kind of a trite expression. Maybe it's even a cliche now, but I like the phrase "success leaves clues." It's just true. And you can see that not only in people, you can see it in things in your business as well. So what were the top 3 wins last year? And then I would even take it a step further. Did they have anything in common, and how can I replicate those, or even maybe put a force multiplier on those wins over the coming year? And if you take the time just to do that one thought exercise without anything else, I would imagine you could find a way to grow your business without spending any other time or even taking away the things that don't work.
Hey, Amazon sellers, are you tired of juggling multiple tools to manage your FBA business? Well, say goodbye to the chaos and hello to Boxum, the all-in-one software that streamlines your shipments, inventory, and profitability tracking in just a few clicks. With Boxum, you'll cut your shipment time in half, gain real-time insights into your business, and keep your inventory under control, all from one simple, intuitive dashboard. Don't waste time. Try Boxum today and take your Amazon FBA game to the next level. Check it out over at cleartheshelf.com/Boxum and start your 14-day free trial now.
Yeah, because again, this will tie into probably every principle and every mindset that we've talked about over the history of this podcast. Because it's talk about the speed of money, right? You analyze those wins. It's amazing how much of this business is simply doing what works faster and more often. It's just like once you break through, once you're really trying to scale up, you realize, to become more efficient. The reason we talk about that so much is because it's so important to the bottom line, to the numbers that you're trying to hit. And going through all of the things we're going to go through on this episode is about being able to measure everything. You need, like I said, you have to shine a light on it. You have to be able to measure it, because if you can measure it, you can figure out how to do it faster, whether that be, a process of your own, whether that be outsourcing it. But it's just amazing how much speed plays a role in reaching your ultimate goals.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, it's not only a win, that's what you're looking for. That's also gets into, you need to analyze what were your biggest challenges or your biggest failures of the year. It's not fun to talk about, but it's necessary. And probably also it is a reason why it's so important to talk about your wins. We talk about celebrating those wins. Absolutely. Don't pass them off. Celebrate those wins, because the flip side to it is you need to really analyze what you failed on, and figure out what the biggest failures were, and work to correct those. Because if you can prune that bottom layer of your biggest mistakes off, and constantly think about a cycle of year over year, to where you prune and remove the biggest failures, and you don't repeat those, you're going to find eventually after a few years, you're running a pretty tight ship. Mm-hmm. So, again, like echo what I said earlier, you need to be honest, and figure it out. And it's not criticism. It's not anything to feel bad about. Every business has challenges. Every business has failures. That's essentially what being a business owner is, or what, CEOs, they say, they're simply problem solvers. They're just glorified problem solvers. So the more problems you identify, the more problems you can solve. And essentially, by that definition, you're becoming a better CEO of your business, doing it that way.
Yeah, my grandfather always told me when I was young and trying to figure out what I wanted to do, like, the more problems that you solve, the more money that you'll make. And I don't it just always made sense to me. That is why entrepreneurs make the entrepreneurs by and large do make more than the average employee. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Right.
And it is because they are solving problems. And I think a lot of people, they do have a hard time looking in the mirror and saying, "Oh, this is where I failed." It doesn't feel good. Okay. Um, I hate to say this and be so like, you got to suck it up. And if you can't do it for yourself, is there someone that you can trust who will do it for you? In a way that is constructive, not just to beat up on you. I'm fortunate enough to have several people in my circle who, if I need to, I could go to and I could say, "Hey, I need some honest feedback here. What do you think a shortfall is here? And is there a way that I can fix it?" um and if you can't do that for yourself, you got to find someone who can help you with it. And then the cool thing is that you can kind of do the inverse, and you can just say, "Oh, well, if this was my failure, what does my business look like if this doesn't exist?" And then that will often take you down the path of, "Oh, well, here's how we make that failure, that problem, that challenge disappear, just by thinking, what does it look like without it there?" So, like, I don't know. It is a good, um, it's a good mental exercise, if nothing else. Um,
Yeah.
Another
And
question. Yeah.
and just to put a button on it, you're not going to get that through social media.
Mm-hmm.
That's the key thing is I think a lot of people run into the problem where because you're not going to see the failures on social media. Everyone, that's part of what makes it so dangerous too. We've talked about our kids, in social media, is trying to get them to understand that you're only seeing the greatest hits. You're not going to see failures. And that's true if you follow anything on Amazon FBA, or social media related. Now you'll have groups that mostly bitch and moan, but that's not
Also not
necessarily
healthy.
right. That's not necessarily reality either, because we also know that negatives are much stickier than positives. So,
Mhm.
so you have to make sure you kind of filter your inputs, and if you can get a closer network that, don't just rely on social media and the people that you meet. I mean, that's great, don't get me wrong, but if you can actually start like something like a mastermind to where you actually have a handful of sellers that you can know on a personal level and kind of get to know their tendencies, and it's going to allow you to open up about the challenges, and overall it's going to give you a better view of your peers, and then
Mhm.
that's going to be a much more realistic measuring stick for your
Mhm.
business.
Yeah. Your point about social media is so spot on. If whoever has the superpower of being able to filter the signal through all the noise, uh, I think is able to level up so much faster. Uh,
Mhm.
I wish I wish I was a little better at filtering the signal through the noise. All right. Let's the next one of the other questions you can ask is, what were some trends in your sourcing or in your sales that surprised you? Um, and I'll give you an example. Okay. I actually found one of these just the other day. Um, we don't sell a lot of we don't sell a lot of dishes. They tend to break easier, things like that. But I happened to see a product that was for sale, and it was a very particular kind of dish. It was a salad plate, and that took me down a rabbit trail of these outdoorsy style plates. Things with turkeys on them, or buffalo, or that kind of thing. Something you would expect to see maybe in a uh, I don't know, some log cabin somewhere out in Montana, sitting down to dinner. Well, I go down this rabbit hole, and these things are selling like crazy. I had no idea that there was such a market for this kind of product, and that surprised me. that kind of thing may happen in your business. And it's a good idea to mark down, like, what are the trends that I didn't expect? And how did they pay off? That way you can keep your eyes open to similar trends, because they will happen over and over and over again. Did you hop on a crazy good product? We'll talk about a viral product from a couple years ago, the hot Taki or Pocky chip, whatever it was, you know. So if you watched how that went, it's going to be much easier to spot that when it happens again, and it will, because it always does.
Yep. I wonder if the outdoorsy dinnerware is a Yellowstone effect.
That's kind of what I was thinking. There's
Mhm.
and there's so many spin-offs from that show. There's Yellowstone, there's
Mhm.
1883 and 1923, and one of the characters from Yellowstone is getting a spin-off of their own. And there's another season, I think, of 1883 coming out. And so I am curious if that is the case. It would not surprise me at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Couple that with Chip and Joanna Gaines, they're like the sliding door, and there's now wooden sliding doors in all the newly decorated homes.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, you can kind of keep your eye on this stuff. And then, not to mention TikTok trends, their entire ASINs that explode if you're able to watch TikTok, and if you can get the timing right, a lot of the times that's kind of my default assumption when I see something and I'm not sure why it took off. It's like, well, it must be TikTok,
Right?
because I'm not on it and I refuse to get on it. So talking about trends, it's not only present tense, current day trends. Analyze trends that stay consistent year over year. This is this is the beauty. We're gonna run adjacent to that wonderful marketing term, replens. But it's important to know the things that are going to come back, because let's face it, there's not a lot of predictability in this business. And the more predictable things you can identify and key on, it makes life so much easier. We've probably run in multiple years now. We talk about, selling candy canes in February. Now it's not going to buy you a vacation home. We're not saying that, but you pile enough of these things up. And right now, I was just sourcing last night. I was sourcing a bunch of Christmas themed like decorations and stuff, because that stuff is all heavily marked down. And you look at it and if it's not like, like an identifier, like a 2024 branded item, which even that doesn't necessarily rule anything out. But if it's something that has more than a year's worth of keep a history, you can go back and get a pretty good idea on how it's going to sell in Q1. And vast majority of the time it's going to sell more than zero. So if you can have these stashes that, a bunch of stores that are all putting their Christmas stuff on clearance come January, you could actually build a pretty nice Q1 with, maybe slower sellers. But I don't find anything wrong with that.
No,
I'm
not at all.
I don't need to be blowing it out, less than 100,000 rank on absolutely everything. Like once you learn how this works, and you buy a handful, say buy 5 of a whole bunch of different things that are on clearance. If you get to the same number as somebody else that insists on buying super fast movers, you can actually get to the same number doing it multiple ways. So it's important to see longer term trends as well.
Yeah. And you bring up Christmas products specifically, and I think a lot of people, especially people who might be newer to Amazon, they probably think that's insane. Why would anybody buy a Christmas item in January or February. But you've got to remember that there are Christmas villages in towns across the country, particularly towns where there's a lot of tourists. I'm thinking Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg, those kind of areas that are open all year round and are packed all year round. So if there is, some sort of local seasonal themed business that stays in business, chances are you can also sell those kinds of products on Amazon outside the season. Matter of fact,
Right.
I was just looking last night. Um, I was looking last night, and in the month of February 2024, in the top 5,000, there were something like 23 or 30 uh, pumpkin spice flavored grocery products that were in the top 5,000 products on Amazon in the grocery category. Like, people want
Right.
what they want when they want it.
Well, that's, you know what, and think about, so there's two things there that excuse me, I can easily identify as massive complaints that people have, right? Everyone starts groaning at the end of summer because the people who market and sell pumpkin spice stuff, they're doing the same thing as everyone is doing now with Christmas. They're introducing it earlier and earlier. They're trying to extend the season that they can sell pumpkin spice, right? So
Mm-hmm.
end of summer, it's like, no, like I'm, at least me personally, I'm always rolling my eyes like, get out of here with this pumpkin spice. Like I'm still grilling on the barbecue inside. Like I'm not ready to think fall yet, because that's kind of like an identifier. And a lot of people are like that. They're like, get this pumpkin spice out of here. It's not time yet. And then people do the same thing with Christmas carols. There's always a handful of people on social media will start announcing it like, well, it's official. I heard Christmas carols playing in whatever store I was in. But think about that. Stores are doing that to try to extend the season, and they're only doing it because there's demand. They wouldn't be doing it if it was crickets, right? So any season that you see, we'll have to keep an eye on Toyotathon when they start that, but not that we can resell Toyotas yet. But if you see the marketing departments start extending things and starting things earlier, that's an identifier that the season, they're trying to extend the overall season, and they're trying to extend it because there is demand. So if there's demand earlier and they're trying to extend the seasons by starting them earlier, why wouldn't you be able to sell it later after the season's over? You can extend it on the back end too. So
Another prompt you can use is, did you meet your revenue and profit goals? But don't just stop there. It can't just be a yes or no answer. Why or why not? Did you not meet revenue goals because you did not source enough, or maybe your whole plan was to reinvest all your profits for the first year, and maybe you decided to pull a little bit out, take a little money off the table. That's okay, but is that the reason you didn't meet your revenue goal or your profit goal? Is it because your inventory turns were a little bit slower and you were unwilling to get rid of the items that became stale? I actually just had to do this yesterday. I had probably 4 or 5 ASINs go from that 0 to 30 days to that 61 to 90 days. It was time to put those into a new bucket of repricing and get them moving. We've got a rule, and that rule just tells us what to do. There's no thinking about it. But if you're always second guessing that and you're leaving that money there instead of reinvesting it, you can have a little bit of a problem. So mark down actually why or why not you may have hit your goals or not hit your goals. If you did, great. You know what you need to do more of. If you didn't, that's okay too. You just now know, well, here's the reason why, and here's how I need to fix that.
yep. And maybe you didn't hit your revenue goal because you were fighting a Section 3 for
It could
a
be
month or so. Yeah, we're not saying that this may be challenging and everything's going to be black and white, but you know what? And here's the most obvious thing, probably. If somebody saw the title, the one thing for sure we were going to talk about. You need to figure out which products were your most and least profitable. Whatever software you use, whether it's a series of spreadsheets or whether you're using Boxum or Seller Board or Inventory Lab, use whatever resources they have, and each one has different degrees of bookkeeping on the back end. But you need to dig into it because here's the thing: what you think is profitable, you're going to be surprised. I guarantee you. If you actually dig in and you look, because you'll have what can happen sometimes is, say you find something and you're really proud of it, and you're like, oh man, this thing has stayed. This thing never had any more than 5 sellers on it the whole time I've been in stock. I've replenished it multiple times, blah, blah, blah. The fact that you're proud of how you found it could influence your opinion of how profitable it is. Those things aren't, it's not a 1-to-1 ratio. A lot of the time is what I've found, and I'm always surprised when I go in, I use Inventory Labs and I'll go in and I'll look at ACE and profitability, and it's amazing how different my opinion of how good a product is to the actual numbers. Especially you start throwing in like return rates, and that's something that isn't going to, maybe not sour a positive opinion that you have of something. Or say it's a store that you like, or, it always has a running coupon code and it's always got a really nice cashback number attached to it. And they let you buy whatever you want. But if that is one of your higher return rates, your numbers aren't going to reflect your positive opinion. There's multiple reasons where it won't reflect it, but you may have it in your head that you're like, okay, this is one of my winners. This is one of my all-stars, when in reality, the numbers don't reflect that. And speaking of the same reports, just I think it's one slot down on if you're using Inventory Labs like I am. You can also identify suppliers as well. You'll have, like I said, you'll have your favorite stores, and Top Cashback will be feeding you 5% or more all the time. And, there's a minimum 10% off code that's going to work all the time. However, you may not realize how many other sellers know about that store as well. You do this long enough and you can almost get a feel for when the consensus of sellers gets onto something that you're on as well. I've had stores that, and it's hard to let them go. I've had stores that I really love sourcing from that just too many sellers know about. So that's something that you can actually track. You can track your supplier profitability as well, and make sure those align to your opinions of it, because that's going to, what is correlated to your personal opinion is the effort you're going to put in sourcing from those places or sourcing those products.
Yeah. I think one of the other things too, that at least in my opinion, is if you find those products that, were your most profitable, what kind of similarities did they have to each other? And can you go out and find other products that are very similar to that? If, I don't know, let's just say that you're selling makeup palette. Well, if this makeup palette is on sale consistently and you buy it over and over and over again, well, it's very likely that the competing brand is going to do something similar. They're going to do what their competition is doing to try to get people to buy their product. So can you then buy that product when it goes on sale, and so on and so forth? And same with suppliers. And you should be plugging these things into, like, if you don't know
I don't know, let's just say Target, for example. That's something everyone knows about, but let's say Target is your most profitable supplier. Well, what other stores are just like Target? And you can go and learn their sales cycles. And if you can't figure it out, please go ask Perplexity or ChatGPT and have AI help you figure out what other stores are similar or sell similar products to your favorite suppliers. You will probably come up with a lot more than you think of. Yeah, there's a bunch of other ways. Chris and I have talked about it. I talked about ways to find off the beaten path suppliers at length in other podcasts. So part of your homework maybe go and listen to some of those other ones. Um, Here's something that I think a lot of people tend to overlook, but a prompt you could use is: were there any unexpected costs or areas of overspending in your business? And can you reduce any of those liabilities? Now, I happen to be someone who enjoys paying for tools and things like that. However, every year I've got to sit down and say, can I get rid of this? Is this something I actually need? And sure enough, I usually find somewhere between $500 and $1,000 in savings a year because I think I'm going to need it. And then I either don't use it because of it doesn't do exactly what I'm thinking, or because I did not implement it into my workflow like I should have. And so I need to get rid of those. I just got rid of something called Streak. I've been paying for 3 years and forgot about it, which is an email software. Um, so can you reduce those, or do you need to take a closer look at them and actually get them implemented properly if you really think there's something that uh, you can help with? Were there other unexpected costs? Were your inbound shipping charges higher than you've been estimating? You should be taking a look at those numbers quarterly, or probably maybe monthly, to be able to recalculate, what is my actual inbound shipping cost. That way, when you're sourcing, you know how much you need to estimate. Did you have to spend more on boxes from your box supplier than you thought you were going to have to? And if so, was there a reason for it? Was it because of a price increase that you weren't expecting? Or is it because you bought more inventory than you thought you were going to buy? And are there any ways to reduce those costs in your business? Can you find another box supplier? Can you negotiate with your prep center based on your volume? There are all these ways where you can pinch a penny here and there without sacrificing quality, because that's how margins are made. Margins are manufactured by saving wherever you possibly can.
Yeah, and you really need to see, when you're analyzing the things that you're paying for, you need to see how much you're getting out of it, or how much you're using it. Like in the case of tools, there's more and more, as time goes on, there's more and more overlap with tools, and what you'll find is, or what I've found at least, is I pay for multiple tools that essentially can do the same thing, right? But I'm hesitant to cancel something because I'm used to that process, right? And I can do it with my eyes closed now. Like it's, like how many, there's a couple different ways to get, the best sellers in the categories. You can get them directly through Keepa. You can do something like, Tactical Bucket has them available, so, but if you're using something like, and I'm not picking on Tactical Bucket, I subscribe to it, I like it a lot. But if you're only using it to pull the best sellers in certain categories, you can do that with Keepa, and there's potential savings there. And this is true with a lot of things, because it seems like competing products, as they unroll and unveil new features, they become a lot like their competitors. And you're getting, the overlap of what these tools can do. And then you'll have things that you approached differently. It's like, oh, I'm going to get this because I need this. And then they were unrelated at the time, but then as they keep adding features, you may find that they're essentially duplicates of each other. So, and not to, another thing that you can analyze, costs or things that you may be paying too much for is make sure you're analyzing the results from your VAs. One of the best things that I did is I instituted a scoring system, to where when they enter the leads on the spreadsheet and I review them, I basically gave them a grade, and they get like 1 point for a good lead. It matches all the criteria. They'll get a quarter point if I mark it maybe on the sheets, to where it's missing one of the criteria that I've given them, or it doesn't match a couple of the criteria, but there's something redeeming about it. Like, it's not necessarily a no, but it's not a yes either. So I'll give them a quarter point for that. And then I add up the scores, and they have to hit a certain number each week. And I tell you what, it's the best thing that I did, was putting that scoring system in, because now I can set expectations. I can raise expectations. It's a little bit subjective, as far as like what I mean, with the criteria isn't subjective, but those maybes, it's like I do find myself in different moods liking stuff, to where I know if it was a different day, I wouldn't like it at all. But but you do have, if you have a set criteria, whether it's a minimum ROI, minimum profit per item, and you have their settings set to match yours, it's pretty objective. So, and then you can analyze, if you have multiple VAs, you can actually compare them. You can compare the outputs, and make changes if you need to that way as well. So, but and speaking about efficiency, you need to analyze how efficient your sourcing methods are. Figure out if there's, speaking of VAs, if there's any way to delegate some of those methods or make them more efficient. This is interesting to me, because you've got a lot of personal preference involved. Like on your live the other day, you had somebody, he said, he goes, I have a hard time sitting at my computer for hours at a time. Right. And it was the type of thing where I saw it, and, just, my cynical brain was like, well, you need to get over it. And I was just kind of, I kind of went that route with it, but you actually took the time and you answered the question, and you really dug into and gave him constructive advice. But I bring that up because, I find myself leaning towards the things that are easier. Right. And it's similar to when you're analyzing profitability of ASINs. It's like you can get a much rosier opinion of something than the numbers actually show, because it's something that you don't get frustrated with the tedium of it and go get a snack 15 minutes in when you're not hungry. It's key to see what the real numbers show you, and as far as efficiencies go, and if you're if you have good VAs, depending on what level that you have, a certain amount of the sourcing can be outsourced after a level of proficiency, which is probably higher than any new sellers are thinking. You certainly don't want to do something until you know the process in and out, because you are the trainer in whatever you delegate. So certainly not, we never condone outsourcing as a solution to something that you're weak in.
Yeah.
But, it'll uncover, it's the same thing. You're probably going to end up being surprised, that you like this, but it's not necessarily as productive as you were hoping for, and vice versa. It's like, I don't do a lot of this because, whatever reason, but it turns out the ROI on it is outstanding, and you should probably get over it.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the other things, if you're being honest with yourself and your business, is did you have any inventory management issues? And this means both overstocks and selling through too quickly. There is a happy medium. And heck, if you pay attention in Seller Central, even Amazon kind of makes it clear what they're looking for. They actually don't want you to sell inventory too fast, because that's not necessarily good for the customer. But they don't want you selling inventory too slow either. Having overstocks will cause things like storage fees to go up. They're gonna be opportunity costs for inventory and capital just sitting there. Selling through too fast may mean you're leaving a little bit too much margin on the table, and maybe you are repricing your inventory a little bit more aggressively than you really should. And so these are things that you're going to want to pay attention to. Um, a lot of people are of the mindset that I need to be turning over my inventory as fast as humanly possible. And we do talk about the speed of money. And yes, the speed of money is important. But what's even more important is making sure that you've also got some margin when it's turning over. And selling through too fast is very often an indicator that there is either no margin or not enough margin. And then once you identify these things, you need to figure out how to cure it. If it's overstocks, understand that you're dating your inventory, you're not marrying it. You don't have to, not all of it's going to be profitable. You're going to have to sell through some of it at a loss. And if you're selling it too fast, well, maybe you want to court a little bit longer before you kick them to the curb. So another good thing to think about in your business.
Thank you for listening to the Clear the Shelf podcast. My magnanimous co-host Chris Rasick has put together a gift for you for being a listener. It's called the Monthly Goal Tracking Spreadsheet, and it's free. The spreadsheet will help you break down and track how much you've purchased, which should be a leading indicator of how much you will sell, and then you'll be able to track how much you've sold as well as your estimated monthly profit on a daily basis. This will all feed into the daily averages so you can ensure that you're on track to meet your goals each and every month. Grab it for free today over at cleartheshelf.com/goal-tracking. Thanks again for being a listener. Now back to the show.
Yeah, it's always interesting when I see people talk about one of the main strategies is staying in stock.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's as a lesser experienced seller or whatever you want to call it, it seems like you tend to dismiss it as, well, that's a good problem to have, like, you're selling stuff too fast. But think about it in terms of a retail store. Say you go to the grocery store and there's certain things that you like over the alternatives much better. Like that's like, I only want this particular brand of, or this particular flavor of whatever it may be. If the shelf is always empty, think about the long-term effect that has on you as a consumer. If they're constantly just never have the one product and you're having to settle for something else or go without, eventually you're going to shop somewhere else, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could come down to that. You may start analyzing where you go. It may get that drastic. So, and if you're frustrated by, like, well, I've got to liquidate all this stuff now, I got to worry about things selling too fast. Yeah, there is a balance. And then I would say, hey, welcome to owning a retail store, because both sides are important. There's fees on one end, and it's anecdotal, but some people think there's kind of a reluctance of Amazon to give you the buy box if you can't stay in stock. They do seem to prefer the sellers that can stay in stock or have
Mm-hmm.
enough stock. We know that quantity of inventory plays some sort of factor, so keep that in mind. Inventory efficiency. Let's talk about the step that gets the inventory to Amazon. You need to analyze how efficient your prepping and shipping is, especially if you're doing it yourself, or even with a prep center. You need to analyze. You definitely have to take a look at it. Is there a way to streamline your process? Let's start with, okay, if you're doing it yourself, if you're shipping everything yourself, there is a balance here as well. Because if you're high energy and you ship out and you can't stand to have anything sitting here, you may be paying more in shipping than you need to. You may have smaller shipments, and Amazon's gonna send those to multiple destinations, probably more often. And if the weight of your boxes, if you're stuck in a situation where you've got to send to 5 different fulfillment centers, but 3 or 4 of them, they're boxes that are only weighing 10, 15, 20 pounds or something like that, you're probably paying a little bit too much in shipping. And then obviously vice versa, it would be not shipping fast enough. If you're having stuff sit and you're getting busy with other things and you're not managing your time well, and days are going by past where you wanted to send that shipment out, that should be self-explanatory. You're costing yourself money, because that inventory is not in there. You need time to process and whatnot. If you have prep help, because that's where I fall into, I would always find something else, to occupy my time, or it'd be so late and it's like, oh, I can't start that shipment now. I'll have to push it to tomorrow. So if you find yourself, if you're one of those people that pushes stuff, I have prep help. Like I've talked about it, I hire my mom to come over, and one of the best things I did was set a particular day, and that's the day she comes over. And what that does is that puts a deadline on me to have enough for her to prep, and then I can't, and then I need to clear it out. It's all sitting in the living room, and so I have the person coming to do the prep. I have to be ready for that, and then I have my wife coming home, and I got to get that stuff out of the way, and it's got to look like somebody lives there. It can't look like a factory, or a warehouse. So, I kind of set those restrictions on myself, or those markers to force myself into action. So, there's definitely a balance between the two.
Absolutely. Yeah, this next one, I don't think anyone will have trouble spending large amounts of time on this one. But what Amazon policy changes have had or will have the largest effect on your business? Now, this is not meant to just give you room to piss and moan about the changes that Amazon has made, because honestly, that's not constructive past a certain point. It may be a little cathartic. I totally understand that. But once you tweet about it or yell into the abyss or whatever it is you do to make yourself feel better, you now need to try to be constructive. And the way you do that is, how can you adapt or overcome? Or, how are you just going to deal with it? Whether that is a pivot in your business, is that a new process? We could talk about this, the latest change with Amazon reimbursing what they call manufacturing cost. Well, it's not quite just manufacturing cost. It'll be your cost of purchase, but it's not going to be the sell price. However, to get that, you're going to have to update your costs to Amazon. So now you've got another layer of management. Well, how are you going to adapt to that? Well, for me, it's going to be pretty simple. When it's time to go in and set the repricer, it's also going to be time to go into Amazon and say, okay, here's what my costs were to purchase these products. That way, if they do lose them, I know that I should be getting reimbursed what Amazon is going to say that they're going to be doing, and then we'll adjust as time goes on. But what other changes? We've got some changes to inbound shipping that are coming yet again. How are you going to adjust to that? And try to make this as productive as possible. Don't just, again, I'm going to reiterate this because Amazon sellers seem very prone to this. Don't just use this as a time to bitch and moan, because it can very easily devolve into a complaining session, and you want it to be something that is actually going to help you move your business forward.
Yeah, exactly. You have to kind of compartmentalize your angst,
Right.
for the long-term good of your store. You need to this is kind of general. This kind of covers a couple different things, but you need to analyze if there have been any shifts in competition, or pricing trends, right? So, and this is kind of akin to a couple of things that we talked about. But are there certain stores, that you're getting certain products from, that have more seller traffic now? Take a look at how it used to be, or how you remember it, to how it is now. Um, or if you've identified products based on sales cycles, that you may find, if you're analyzing pricing trends of these products, and again, you realize that more sellers are figuring out that they can source from the same sources that you are, you may see pricing trends show that when shortly after these sales go on, if something goes on a BOGO sale or something like that, that the prices drop drastically. And if you can identify that trend, that doesn't mean that you necessarily have to stop sourcing something like that. It may be the type of thing where you maybe hold on to it and let all of the 0% ROI day one people sell out, and you may find that it's profitable to, maybe wait a week before you send that stuff in, if you're doing something like a sales cycle. But there are all sorts of trends that are potentially identifiable as far as pricing and other sellers around you on your listings that you stay active on.
Mm-hmm. Another thing you can discuss with yourself is, how well did you manage your time? This is always one of my least favorite things, because it's always me beating myself up for a half an hour about how poorly I allow distractions to come in, or how poorly I'm able to manage the tasks I want to get done. However, it's important, and it's something I've been trying to do better at, with to-do lists and keeping better notes and things like that. But uh, figure out what is causing you to maybe manage your time poorly, and cut those things out. Maybe it is distractions on the internet. Well, there are apps for that. You can lock yourself out of social media and other things. You can put your phone on airplane mode. I saw someone tweet earlier today. He said that every morning they like to treat a couple of hours like they're hopping on a plane, and they will put their phone on airplane mode, put their computer on airplane mode, and then they sit down and they can't do anything except for the task that they were looking to work on. So, can you implement something like that for yourself? Whether it's during a sourcing session, or when you're trying to manage the books, or whatever it is. How do you manage your time better? Um, it'll Heck, focused work, which there's a great book about it. I always forget his name.
Is it Cal Newport?
Yeah, Cal Newport.
Deep
Read
work.
Cal Newport's book, and learn how much you can get done in short periods of time of actual focused work.
Yeah, actually, Deep Work and Slow Productivity by Cal Newport. I think they're both equally worth the read. A little bit of
Mm-hmm.
redundancy, but if you like it, like me, you'll be okay with it. Yeah, and hey, the great thing this time of year, if you're looking to improve time management, there's all sorts of tips floating around. Just
Right.
do what we just told you not to, and pick up your phone and scroll through social media. But stay focused, stay on task. You know what? And this again, these are cousins to time management, but you need to identify anything that's burning you out, and it's worth mentioning separately from just time management. This is not to get woo woo, even though I'm prone to. There is such a thing as solopreneur or self-employed mental health. This is a lonely business. You're working by yourself for vast amounts of time. There's no water cooler, to go gossip and blow off some steam and try to reset things. There aren't coworkers that you get along with, that you can kind of bounce ideas off of. There are long periods of time where it's just you. So, and the less drastic version of identifying burnout is identify the bottlenecks in your business. Ultimately, the common denominator between the two of those is find out and identify the things that you aren't getting done, and figure out the reason. Like, it's amazing how many things, and this folds back into time management, like you were talking about too. But we buy our own BS a lot, or we can. It's interesting how many things that aren't actually time management. It's not actually a bottleneck. It's not actually burnout. It's the fact I don't know enough to start something, or you just, if you can identify what's causing things to not get done, realize that there is probably an identifiable reason that something's not getting done. It's not necessarily like doing something faster or more efficient or outsourcing that's going to cure a bottleneck. Sometimes just identifying that you don't like doing something can actually put you on the process to curing, burnout or a bottleneck. Like that's why I hired prep help, because I hate prepping, and I would put it off. I would, it was kind of the thing where, oh, it's late at night, I can't start that shipment. Aw, shucks. Because secretly, if I'm being honest with myself, I didn't want to do it. So I paid someone else to do it, and that's how I solved that bottleneck. That's how I got more efficient. But it's all about being honest with yourself. Identify the things that are the negative influences in your business.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now let's shift gears a little bit and let's talk about like setting goals and future changes, because the whole point of these prompts was to look backward so that we can look forward. Hindsight is 2020, of course, and we've kind of just got to feel our way through as we go forward, but we can sort of chart a path. And so one of the first things I would think about as I'm setting goals or figuring out what I'm going to do in the future is, what sourcing strategies based on what we've talked about, should I be doubling down on in 2025? This again goes back to that 80-20 rule. What is the 20% of the inputs that created 80% of the outputs? And if you've identified that, then that is what you should probably be doubling down on for this next year. And you can do that for each and every part of your business.
Yep. As far as setting goals, whatnot, take a look at the categories that you're selling in, and the types of products, because you may find out that it may be wise to reduce your exposure in certain categories. This is one of the things where, when I look back on social media posts and anything, Amazon related that I've put out on social media, there are a couple times where I thought I wanted to sell in certain categories, that I don't any longer. And I realized that opinion, the past opinion, wasn't the wisest. And it could be for multiple reasons. Maybe, the common one, there's probably a lot of people sitting out there shaking their head going, yep, I'm getting out of beauty. That's probably the redheaded stepchild of categories right now, based on brand restrictions. I disagree with that, but that's a topic for another show. but I was all about pet supplies, and because I like the idea of how much money people spend on their pets, right? Those numbers seem to be climbing pretty aggressively. And there's a lot of specialized, because I always like capitalizing on kind of boutique preferences, and like I've talked about it before, like I love selling organic, because there's an increase in price that's just expected, and people who firmly believe that they're being healthier by buying this type of stuff, they're willing to spend more. And people with their pets, pet spending is, the numbers show that number is rising. And as a result, the marketers have started marketing more specialized products for pets, right? And as a result, prices are going up, right? So there's an expected increase in spend because you spare no penny for little Fido or whatever it is. But it turns out pet category it's pretty small. It's not as big as I thought it was. It's even smaller than grocery. It's not even one of those where you can kind of set a benchmark for 100,000. There's even some stuff ranked, you start getting into 70, 80,000 in pets, and you got to start making some decisions and casting some stuff off. So that was just an example of something I thought I wanted to sell in. And the theory is sound, like pet spending is going up. However, based on the category as it sits on the Amazon marketplace, it's focusing a little bit of attention can be profitable. A lot of attention is probably a waste, and it's better served elsewhere. So
Absolutely.
Make sure you analyze categories and the types of products that you like to sell.
Really does surprise me about the pet category. I mean, we know how much people are spending it. I don't know why they're not moving that money to Amazon at a pace that they've moved other spending to Amazon, like grocery and so on. It's interesting.
It may be D2C. They may be it may be more traction D2C than than the average.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you plan on diversifying your sourcing in the next year? Do you want to add wholesale? Do you want to finally get started on that private label product? That's all fine and good. We're not going to be the people who say that one way is the only way on Amazon. Unlike those private label supremacists, we will admit that every way of selling on Amazon can be done right and profitably. But if you plan on adding another method of sourcing to your business, you're going to need to make sure to set up some sort of KPI, or plan as to how you're going to get that done. If it's wholesale, for example, I'm going to call X number of suppliers every single week. I'm going to, spend X number of dollars with these accounts. You need to make sure that there's a plan in place, because I've said I'm going to add wholesale significantly to my business for the last 5 years. What I haven't done is actually put a number on it that forces me to get it done. So you don't want to make the same mistake I have.
You need to see if there are any areas that you need training on. Are there courses, books, podcasts, YouTube channels that you can follow to augment your skills? Not to mention, your skill constantly needs support. We're big on education. We've talked about it numerous times. But there is such a thing as skill erosion, especially in a marketplace that moves as fast as Amazon, FBA, and even arbitrage. Throw wholesale in there. Things change. Products. Think about products. Talk to some older sellers and ask them what stuff didn't they have that they have now, and you'll get a sense for how fast things move. So, staying up on things, keeping your education sharp is really, really important, because you're gonna, you certainly don't want to be left behind with stuff, and you do constantly want to improve, and don't be afraid to spend. I know there's people like, oh, it's all free on YouTube. But if you're the type of person that you need to put a little skin in the game, to hold yourself accountable, which I'm raising my hand, that's me for sure. Don't be afraid to spend on education. And while we're on, the time of year where you're making resolutions or something, if you're one of those people that, well, I'm just not a reader, set some sort of small goal. Read 5 pages a day for 5 days a week, or whatever you need to get locked in. But make sure you're constantly keeping yourself the best entrepreneur that you can, the best Amazon seller that you can be, and that takes constant refinement and improvement.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite things about knowledge, and reading and educating yourself, is the fact that knowledge compounds.
Mm-hmm.
Read broadly. I'm reading a book right now, totally unrelated to business ownership or selling on Amazon or anything like that. It's sort of a historical look at capitalism, but it's fascinating, and I know that there's going to be something that I take away from it that informs my business life or maybe even my personal life.
Mm-hmm.
I love how knowledge compounds.
Yeah. And even, I'll tell you what, I told you beginning of last year, I made it a point to read more fiction, just completely unrelated to business. I just wanted to sprinkle some in. I wanted to make sure I'm enjoying reading, the actual reading habit, and I flew through some fiction stuff, and it was a great decision.
Oh yeah.
But that's not to say, like, even reading fiction, it helps you with your skills, your interpersonal skills, right? I mean, one of the most important things about reading, is I forget how they put it, but essentially you relate to people better, simply by reading fiction, and not to mention vocabulary and stuff, and it's just good all around. Become a reader if you're not.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you want to become something, a reader is something good. I know I went through 7 fiction books last year. Had to have been the best decision I made all year long, was going through those. Do you need better systems for tracking things like expenses, inventory, or your inputs, like number of units purchased or dollars spent? You cannot measure, or you cannot manage what is not being measured. If you've ever read any Peter Drucker, that quote should stick out. You've got to measure things if you want to manage them. So if you don't have good systems in place, get them in place. Even if it's just a simple spreadsheet of, here's all the things I bought. Here's my goal for number of units every month, and then a tally of how much you've purchased, and then are you above or below that? And where are you tracking every single month? Like, it can be that simple. And then, of course, I mean, inventory and, tracking your expenses, things like that. Those are kind of no brainers. But, if you're using a spreadsheet right now to track all of your expenses, is it time to get QuickBooks? Yes, it's another expense. It is tax deductible, but you want to treat this like a real business. So are there any tools that will actually be helpful to you? It's time to put those in place now rather than wait until July or August when you've got to go back for 6 months.
Yep. And take a look make sure you take inventory of your tasks as a business owner. And specifically take a look at your list of tasks to figure out if there's anything you can outsource. Prep is an easy one. to figure out if it's time to get a prep center, weigh the pros and cons. If you're doing prep yourself, you may be bumping up against an artificial ceiling because you haven't brought on a prep center yet. Maybe it's bookkeeping. A lot of people, you're going to hear a lot of sellers talking about taxes this time of year. If you're having trouble coming up with the numbers that you need to come up with, it may be time to get a bookkeeper or some sort of bookkeeping service. If you're a bigger operation, or you're kind of limited in what you're doing. If you're doing exclusively OA and you're at a certain level, Chris talked about it himself. He wants to bring in potentially RA shoppers, and he wants to bump that portion of his business up. So, and imagine the impact of something like that, to where if you're running, if you're where you need to be with OA, and you can add a wing of RA and outsource it to where it doesn't cost you any attention, in just minimal time. That's powerful. There are going to be some really big green arrows and numbers once that gets implemented. So, yeah, take a look at your task and figure out if there's anything that you can take off your plate. It'll make a big difference.
Absolutely. Now, one thing you should start thinking about as we go into the new year, if this is something you haven't done before, is it's probably time to implement KPIs. Google calls them OKRs, but key performance indicators. All right. Something very easy that you can track is revenue and profit. What is your monthly gross revenue? What's your net profit margin? Those are some very simple numbers that you can gather pretty easily at the end of every month or even the end of every week. If you look in a tool like Boxum, Seller Board, Inventory Lab, etc., you can get those numbers, or at least roundabout numbers, and know what the health of your business is looking like. And that's one KPI you can use. But you're going to want several KPIs so that you can kind of tick along through the year where you're at in your business.
Yeah. Inventory, another very important KPI would be for your inventory, specifically the turnover rate. How many days is your inventory taken to sell out? That's important not only from storage, but it's also important from a sourcing standpoint. If you love the idea of replenishable inventory, you need to know how much to buy. You need to know when to buy more, and you can only do that by knowing what those numbers are. And that's where a KPI for inventory is going to be important, as well as the overall age of your inventory. You need to know figure out when your liquidation strategy begins, as far as like a days in inventory. And if you're going to set liquidation strategies based on X number of days in Amazon fulfillment centers, you need to have a good hold of the age of your inventory that's sitting there. So that's where a KPI for inventory will come in handy.
Absolutely. Another KPI that I think is interesting is sourcing efficiency. And what I mean by that is, what is your ROI by sourcing method? This is probably something a lot of people do not keep track of. Let's say that you do reverse manual sourcing or storefront stocking. You do regular manual sourcing, and you use a tool like tactical arbitrage. Well, you could very easily say, hey, you know what? I'm going to spend an equal amount of time on all three of these. Let's say I spend 12 hours a week sourcing. I've got 3 different methods of sourcing. I'm going to spend 4 hours on each one of these methods. You could then track where you found the products. Did you find it through TA? Did you find it through storefront stocking? Did you find it through manual sourcing? And over the course of the next month or 6 months, you could then pull those products by method and see what your ROI was. Well, if one of them is beating the others by an order of magnitude, then maybe it's time to spend most of your time on that sourcing method rather than on the others. And even if your ROI is a little bit lower, maybe you could also look at what is the gross revenue for each one of those sourcing methods. Are you buying more units per hour using tactical arbitrage than you are with manual sourcing? Maybe your ROI on manual sourcing is 30%, but your ROI on tactical arbitrage is 20%, but your gross revenue is double with tactical arbitrage based on the speed at which you can go through products. Knowing that will allow you to know where you should focus your time and where you might be able to afford to teach someone else to take something off your plate so that you can focus on the highest leverage activities.
Yep, absolutely. And if you're picking up on the theme, and I don't think we're well over an hour into this episode, so I don't think there are any people that don't have spreadsheets. They probably turned this off long ago. But
Right.
if you happen to still be this deep, get some spreadsheets for Christ's sake. Like that always blows my mind when I see that. And don't let the terms KPI scare you off. Right? These are simpler than the acronym, or the fact that it is an acronym will make it sound. But you need to track these. The more data points, the better. Another one is track your returns. I spent many years having no idea what my return rates were. It was what it was, and that was about it. But now, as a result, I am hiring someone to go through my death pile and help me list on eBay and liquidate some of these returns. And I have no idea what that rate was. I have no idea if it's normal, abnormal, or if I'm just an idiot, So, but I have an additional cost in my business now to help me liquidate and get my capital back, which is that's idiotic on my part. So I'm paying the price and we're getting through it. Newer sellers, also we should mention, a good KPI would be your break even. We talked about tools and whatnot. And as far as maybe streamlining tools that you don't use, you don't need, or that are redundant, make sure you know how much you need to sell or how much profit you need to break even. Figure out what your monthly nut is, as far as everything that you pay on a monthly basis. If it's something that you pay yearly, break it down into a monthly portion, and figure out where zero is. That's an important number to know, especially if you're a new seller.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you are willing to just spend 60 to 90 minutes thinking about your business rather than just being a drone that works on your business all the time, I guarantee that this exercise will put you ahead of 90% of other sellers. And if you don't think you know what to do, there are one, you've just got a resource that we put together for you, an hour and a half of content that you can take and you can just apply it to your business verbatim. But outside of that, you can ask things like ChatGPT, like Perplexity, to act as a business consultant. You can specifically tell it to act like a business consultant from a place like McKinsey, and they will try to use the best practices from these large scale management and consulting companies to help you come up with a post-mortem or a business review. And you can then continue to ask it questions, maybe as you put in answers. If you say, hey, here's where my sourcing efficiency is based on these sourcing methods, you can say, what would your opinion be as to what I should do going forward? What should my sourcing mix be? Just ask it questions like it's another person, and at least get some ideas from it that you can then either tweak a little bit or implement into your business.
Yep. It's this isn't fun the idea of auditing your business or taking year-end inventory, it just it's ulcer inducing, really, and and I get it, but the thing is, it's one of those things where once you get started, you're happy you did it. It's like that Mike Tyson quote, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. So not only the post-mortem, you're identifying the struggles so that you can correct them that you had, but getting in touch and getting your finger on the pulse of your business truly by going through this process, this post-mortem, it's going to help you moving forward. You're going to be better prepared for struggles that are going to come your way in the new year, because guess what? There are going to be struggles that come your way in the new year. That's so the more prepared you are, maybe the less you'll bitch about them on social media. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
The more prepared you are, the faster you can overcome it and just get back to business. The important part of it, get back to just making money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one of the best examples of this right now, which still appropriate, is the Section 3s.
Mm-hmm.
You and I have both had Section 3s, and I think that the way that we've handled them is maybe 180 degrees from the way that I see them handled by other people. And not necessarily in the way that they submit documentation or anything like that, but the words that I see, heck, I think I saw it just earlier this morning. Someone in one of my groups just got through their Section 3, but the words were fear, anxiety, loss of hope. Like, that should not be the way it is, especially if you think about it ahead of time. I know that this is a possibility. If it happens, here's what I'm going to do. And now when it does, or if it does happen, something bad, something you don't want to happen, you're like, okay, I knew this was coming, or had a possibility of coming. I know exactly what my plan is. Now there's no fear, there's no anxiety, there's no worry. We just get to work and we tackle the problem. I want to see that be the mindset for more Amazon sellers in 2025, rather than just this fear-based reactivity. Anyway, that's my hope. So my question is, and seriously, drop them in the comments wherever you might be listening or watching to this, whether it's Spotify or YouTube. But what KPIs do you use to measure and manage your Amazon business, or what have we missed? I'd love to hear them. I always want to get new ideas on KPIs. And as you guys know, we always try to end the show with a quote of the week, and I thought this one was extremely appropriate. Also happens to come from someone who just passed away in 2024, one of the management icons, H. James Harrington. He says, measurement is the first step that leads to control and eventually improvement. If you can't measure something, you can't understand it. If you can't understand it, you can't control it. If you can't control it, you can't improve it. Would have been super easy to pull a Peter Drucker quote out, but I wanted to dive a little deeper into the grab bag of quotes that we've got. So, all right, guys, that is it for this pod. I hope that you maybe not enjoy the time doing an autopsy or a postmortem on your business, but you go through the work. It will put you ahead of the pack. So until next episode, thanks so much for listening. Thanks for listening to Clear the Shelf with Chris and Chris. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a screenshot on your phone and share to Facebook, Instagram, or your favorite FBA group, and be sure to tag me and let me know why you liked it and what you'd like to hear more from us in the future. Also, I'd like to give you some free gifts for listening. Head over to rabbittrailchallenge.com and repricerchallenge.com for some free courses to further your business. Thanks for listening.